I had a young kid on my desk in Tokyo who was banging on about Bitcoin all the time. I kept thinking, why is he talking about this scam on the internet? I kept saying this to myself as I was reading the book. And eventually it got to the point where I got to the end of the book, I was like, I have to understand this. Another conversation with the board was, why would you target such low volatility for Bitcoiners? They're so used to volatility. And I had to explain, no, they're not used to volatility. There's no volatility in Bitcoin. There's zero volatility in Bitcoin. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. That's zero volatility. I think that it's a necessary thing that Wall Street starts adopting Bitcoin. That's where all the capital sits today. For us to see $20, $30 million Bitcoin price, you're going to need serious amounts of capital. That will be the point where Bitcoin flips everything and everyone wants to denominate in Bitcoin. And that only happens if you see traditional capital start to unlock into the Bitcoin system. The large proportion of people in finance don't understand even the basics of financial products. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look like they shouldn't be there, so they don't ask the question. And so they live on ego. Just follow the alignment of your values with Bitcoin and align everything with Bitcoin. And it just has a way of working itself out and making your life better generally.
Today's a special one. This is episode 100 of You're the Voice. 100 conversations about truth, freedom, and sovereignty, and the future of money. And I couldn't have done this without you. So to everyone who's listened, shared, supported, or joined this fearless journey, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And what a guest to celebrate with. My guest today is Richard Byworth. Richard is a seasoned investor and former CEO of Diginex, where he led the first ever NASDAQ listing of a Bitcoin exchange company. With over 2 decades bridging investment banking and digital assets, he's been right at the forefront of institutional Bitcoin adoption. Today, he's the managing partner of Syz Capital, board member at Relai, and advisor to Blockstream. And he also hosts the Syz the Future podcast, exploring how finance, technology, and freedom come together. Now, as I do, I hijacked his studio to record this episode. So what you're going to see is recorded in Richard's studio in Switzerland. Richard is one of those rare voices who blends deep financial experience with conscious thinking and long-term vision. Exactly the kind of guest I love having on my show. In our conversation, we discussed ego and humility in finance, intuition in decision-making, and the rise of Bitcoin Treasury companies, and also why Richard believes Bitcoin itself is a benevolent gift, a source of hope for humanity. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps You're the Voice break through shadow banning and censorship, and it helps us keep growing. So thank you and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. I don't even know the name of the town we're in. I normally say from. Which town is it?
We're in Pfeffikon.
Pfeffikon?
Exactly.
Oh my God. Okay, from Pfeffikon, Switzerland. And I'm here with Richard Byworth. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Afra.
So
great
good
to be here.
Yeah, so good.
Well, great to have you here.
Well, so good to have you in your office. Thanks for hosting me. This is awesome. So as I always do, being a digital nomad now, I hijack people's studios. So I now hijacked yours.
Yeah, you got the Syz Capital studio.
There you go.
For Syz the Future.
There you go. I love the name Syz the Future.
Yeah.
It's a really good brand.
Thanks.
So thanks for accepting my invitation to be on my pod. And we met for the first time. I think it was the first time in Prague.
It wasn't.
Well, but
okay.
It was because that's
properly met.
Because then we started talking, and then I said, "Oh my God, where have you been? You're so cool. We need to do this." And so here we are. And I've been following your podcast, Syz, and I would really love to have a conversation with you that touches both on Bitcoin and finance, but also a little bit beyond on why this matters to you and maybe the connection to the more spiritual side of things. which we had a little bit of a conversation about. So I want to start with your move from finance, traditional finance, to Bitcoin. So you were early in bridging traditional finance with Bitcoin. What was the moment you realized that the legacy system was broken?
Oh, I realized it was broken way before I understood Bitcoin.
Okay.
2008 was my wake-up call. And I remember sitting in Tokyo with the guy on my team sat next to me saying he was going to go down to Citibank to draw out all his cash because he was worried about Citibank collapsing.
Wow.
I mean, that was the level of fear that was in the financial system. If you were at the sort of the forefront of this space, I mean, I was a little bit ridiculing of him at the time, I remember. And then, of course, the system was saved by printing all that money. And that, for me, was the moment where I realized that the money was, forever going to be corrupted, inflated, and debased. And I started buying gold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You too.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I started buying gold because I thought to myself, well, I just was at the point of having kids. I was like, well, how on earth am I going to store my wealth for them when, and I was constantly trying to play this game of what fiat currency was the best. Was it Swiss francs? Was it dollars? Was it pounds? Because I was a little bit like you. I was not in my home country. I was living in Hong Kong at the time. And it was just a constant challenge of thinking about where do I put my cash to maintain my purchasing power.
Right.
So I started buying gold. And then I'd actually dismissed Bitcoin as early as 2010. I had a young kid on my desk in Tokyo who was banging on about Bitcoin all the time. I went over for a business trip and there he was just talking about Bitcoin. I'm like, Matt, just shut up and sell some derivatives to our clients. I told him it was a scam because I assumed it was, because it was something on the internet. And, I'd grown up certainly without the internet. And, the biggest question always was, if you put your credit card details into the internet, you were surely going to get your money stolen. And so anything involving money on the internet, in my mind, was likely to be a scam.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my first vision of Bitcoin in 2010, which was very early to be dismissing it. And then I read the book Sapiens by Yuval Harari in 2017, beginning of. So I'd had my kids, as you know, when you have kids, you don't get to read books. That's a luxury.
Oh, yeah.
That suddenly just disappears. And I went skiing to the Club Med in Hokkaido, where you could literally drop your kids off in their pajamas to the ski school.
Yep.
And not see them again until 5 p.m.
Yep.
So I started reading the book. And this was the first book I'd read in 7 years. And he had some interesting ideas and a lot of ideas sort of talking about technology melding with the future and what the future might look like. And I agreed with a lot of the concepts, which were frankly chilling in many areas. But he kept talking about Bitcoin and blockchain and I kept thinking, why is he talking about this scam on the internet? I kept saying this to myself as I was reading the book. And eventually it got to the point where I got to the end of the book. I was like, I have to understand this. So I read the white paper, didn't understand a word of it, found it very challenging to understand. If someone had just sat me down and said, listen, there's only 21 million of these things, but it was 2017 and, this was not something that was focused on.
Yeah.
Then I would have
reading
got
the
it.
white paper is the first thing you do is very challenging.
Yeah, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it took me quite a lot of time to get through it and get, back then again, there wasn't so much education as there is today. It's not so easily accessible. And it took me till the end of 2018 to get to the point of saying to myself, I don't have enough Bitcoin. And that was the wake-up moment. It was October 2018. I remember it very clearly.
noticing how broken the system is, working in finance, even before that, like having your background, did you not know that the fiat system is operating in that way?
Yeah.
Was that your introduction into, hold on, there is something wrong in the design of this system?
So when you get into finance, you immediately specialize.
Okay.
Right. And so you will end up, and my immediate specialization was a product called convertible bonds.
Right.
And, you don't spend your time thinking about debt, money printing, the central banks. Like, you're focused on pricing this very complex derivative product and the various inputs to it that will change the pricing.
So you don't question the base assumptions.
You're not sitting there questioning it in the same way that most people don't question why on earth are you using paper as money, right? People don't ask these questions. And I would say that, the large proportion of people in finance don't understand even the basics of financial products.
Right.
And this all comes back to, and I talk about ego a lot when I talk about Bitcoin, because throughout my career, I was not a finance guy. I studied French at university. So throughout my career, from the very beginning, I was always having to ask questions because I didn't understand anything. I didn't know anything about the theory of all these products and anything. So for me, the learning was very practical. But then the difference is, in traditional finance, is you see people that have learned purely from textbooks. Oh, they understand what a derivative is. I've got to check my notes. I know what that is. But they haven't really ever practically used it or practically understood it and said, well, hang on a minute. Why would an investor buy this, or why would an investor sell this? Right? So they have a very good theoretical understanding, but that's not practically based. And I think that this is a large problem with a lot of the financial system is people don't understand it from a practical point of view. There's a lot of theory. And, I think that makes sense. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I seem to remember studying this in college, right? And so you don't have the practical implementation. And I think that I was very fortunate that I always was having to question stuff. And, even when I became very senior in investment banking, I would still ask perceptibly stupid questions. I didn't care because I was like, well, and I would always tell the grads, the stupid question is the one you don't ask because you're going to get made to look stupid later if you don't understand what this is. So I always encourage people to ask questions, no matter how stupid they might seem. And I think that served me quite well.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code AFLAT. Self-custody is powerful, but what if someone forces you to unlock your wallet? Bitcoin settles instantly, and that freedom can also be a risk. BitVault is the first Bitcoin wallet built to protect against both physical attacks and digital hacks. It creates a banking-grade vault on-chain with 2 of 3 multi-sig, time-delayed transactions, 2 hours to 15 days, giving you space to react, trustless recovery after 1 year, works with trusted hardware wallets, open source, and built with one focus, beyond keys, protecting humans. Only 42 lifetime subscriptions are available at $199 forever. Head over to bitvault.sv to sign up and use code AFLAT for 10% off. And that relates to what you said about ego, that in order to, if you're a finance person, then in order for you to really understand this new system that exists now, you have to question your base assumptions on the existing one. And if you don't lower your ego to say, oh, maybe I was wrong, or maybe I was manipulated,
or maybe I didn't understand.
Or maybe I didn't understand.
Yeah, and I think this is key because actually the majority of people in finance don't understand the large majority of what's happening but they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look like they shouldn't be there. So they don't ask the question.
Right.
And so they live on ego, right?
Right.
Of course I'm supposed to be here. Of course I'm smart. Of course I'm supposed to earn $5 million a year.
Right.
Of course I am. I'm super smart.
And wouldn't it be great if people just came out and said, you know what? I want to unlearn and relearn.
Yeah.
Can you sit with me and explain something to me that I may not know?
Mm-hmm.
People appreciate that kind of humbleness so much. And they will give you the time of day.
Absolutely.
To teach you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with you. It's an ego test on the most part.
Well, the whole thing is.
Yeah.
Like the whole system is built on ego.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like if I'm a managing director at Goldman Sachs, I cannot ask a question of an associate about a product that he sits in that I don't sit in. I just can't. Like it's inconceivable that I would ask that question.
And when we say ego, I think we don't just mean the pride of it, but also the survival.
Yeah.
Like your ego is what really protects you, right? It's a survival mechanism. And so you know that if you follow and comply with what everyone else is doing and saying, then you'll be better off. Less risk, more guaranteed income and acceptance, etc. So it's not just the pride side of it.
But it leads to an insecurity.
Absolutely.
Because you know deep down you
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's so true.
Well, isn't it a great exploration to start then lowering your guard and say, I'm ready to learn something new.
Exactly.
Okay, so that leads me really perfectly to the next question. So how much of your life or career decisions were driven by intuition or gut feeling versus rational analysis?
Great question. I've had 3 points in my career which were turning points.
Okay.
And every time I made the decision, like I'm going to quit or I'm going to do something different, I always did the same thing. I wrote the letter of resignation. I put it in my desk.
Yeah.
And I sat on it thinking about it.
Okay.
For 2 days, 3 days. And every single time it altered the course of what I was going to do rather than if I'd handed over that letter. But I would always act upon it, but not actually give the letter, if you understand what I mean. So I'd say, okay, it's got to a point where I'm ready to resign.
Yep.
These are the things that I need to change, or this is what I'm going to go and do. I always had a plan about what I was going to go and do next. And every time my manager at the time, there were different managers, talked me out of it and allowed me to see a different path. And we then created that different path forward, which ended up being a huge pivot in my career.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I think that I can't remember exactly your question now. But
so the question is, was it intuition that led you to take certain decisions or more like a logical analysis of?
Yeah. So I think our intuition is guided by data points that we don't necessarily perceive immediately. And I think that what I did with this was allow it to sit and allow my broad data points to be open to whatever the route I'd chosen was, and see how that sat, and then confide in my direct manager that this was the route I was about to take. And yeah, it allowed me to really sort of guide my career and also seek mentorship, which I think is really important. I think everybody, you know, when you're a young person in any industry, you don't necessarily know what you're doing. I think more and more people are short-term minded, and they can't necessarily see that if they haven't progressed in 2 years, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to progress in 40 years, right? So I think, the intuition is formed by data points. And so I didn't quite know that I was going to stay. I was pretty convinced I was going to leave, but I ended up staying in each
changing
case.
the course
And
of
changing the course
things.
completely.
Yeah, which takes us back to, even if, life is kind of pre-written and decided by us by fate, we always have free will and choice, and we can always change the script,
Yeah.
right? Based on the agency that we exercise and our intuition. So, and you mentioned that 3 things were turning points in your life. So was that one of them? Like
No, sorry, three turning points in my career.
Okay.
Yeah. So each time.
Each time it was like that.
It was like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. That's a very good tactic to
Yeah.
take, to like write your letter
Yeah.
and then let it sit there and think about what actually doesn't work for you.
Because it resonates with everything within you.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I'm writing this letter, you're putting it down, you're putting your intention down.
Yeah.
You talk about spirituality and
Yes.
you can get to that. But I think that once you put it down in that way, it allows you to see it in a different angle, a different viewpoint. And so, yeah, that informs you even more deeply as to whether or not this is aligned with what you want.
Yep.
Or it's away from what you want.
I love it. Okay. What were the key obstacles and breakthroughs you experienced trying to bring Bitcoin to institutional clients, which you work with?
Yeah.
We're back to Bitcoin.
Yeah, look, one of the things I did at Syz Capital was launch a Bitcoin-denominated fund. And I started the process with the board, so getting the board approval in October of 2024.
Yep.
And we had a big fight. It was a big fight because I said, look, we need to make sure if we've got a Bitcoin product, we need to speak Bitcoin, we need to be true to Bitcoin. And I want to send a message that we will keep all the Bitcoin that we earn from this product on the balance sheet of Syz Capital. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's speculation. Oh, what are you doing? This is not what we do. Blah, blah. And so we had a big fight.
Too risky.
About it in October. Yeah, too risky. And it was quite funny because I'd said at the time of the price was 70,000 and I'd made a base case for 2025 that the average price would be around, worst case, 100,000. And they were like, what is this base case? Like, how can you have a base case that's 50% above the market price? I was like, yeah, but it's obvious. That's where we're going, global liquidity. It's very clear where we are in the cycle. And it was just, everything that I was saying was just becoming more and more discrediting of myself in their eyes. And so we agreed to disagree conceptually, and that what we would do is have a discussion a few months after the fund had launched about keeping the Bitcoin on the balance sheet.
Okay.
I was very clear in my mind that for me it was all or nothing, and that would be the thing that decided my particular path here. And so anyway, I said, let's just go ahead and launch the fund. So we launched the fund in March. Now, this is a fund that is designed to be very low volatility risk, targeting 5 to 10% return in Bitcoin, which for your average investor in TradFi, that's an awful return. Like, it's a very low return.
Yes.
Right? But for Bitcoin, it's huge.
Right.
Absolutely huge. And I remember another conversation with the board was, why would you target such low volatility for Bitcoiners? They're so used to volatility. And I had to explain, no, they're not used to volatility. There's no volatility in Bitcoin. There's zero volatility in Bitcoin. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. That's zero volatility.
That's right.
And so anyway, again, this was another very long
Yeah, it depends on your lens, right? Is your lens
Absolutely.
that or that?
So we ended up having, again, this they said, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. And that's what you think is the right product. So anyway, launched the product with a volatility of less than 2, targeting 5 to 10% return. Which,
Okay.
Very nice profile. And we had so much demand from Bitcoiners for this product that it ended up being the biggest fund launch in the history of the Syz Group.
Oh, wow.
Which is a 30-year group which has had asset management businesses all through its life. Syz Capital is a relatively new arm, but Syz Asset Management has existed since inception. So we were the largest fund launch in the history.
How did they react?
Exactly. So I got a call from the chairman of the overall group, Eric Syz.
Richard,
can you come to my office? That's pretty much what happened. He said, I don't understand what's happening here. Can you explain to me why?
who are all those people?
Who are all these people
How do
with
they
so
know?
much money and giving you all this money? So I tried to explain, and you know, I mean, Eric is an amazing man and a visionary, and we've spent a lot of time talking about Bitcoin, and he's trying extremely hard to get his head around it, but it's taken some time.
Yeah.
He said to me, look, we've come to a point where I need you to come and explain to the board of the Syz group. So up one from Syz Capital, I want you to explain to the Syz group board. So on that board, there's like 12 board members, all 70-year-old plus, board members from UBS, BlackRock, Swissquote, like serious people, serious credentials in traditional finance. And so what was amazing was because the context of this being the biggest fund launch in the history of the group, they were all like, what is happening?
Completely
they
curious.
all wanted to understand. And so I had the most receptive group I could have possibly imagined. Going in, I was like, I
You
don't
got
know.
their attention.
Yeah, it got their attention. So I think, I've talked about this a lot since, that just going out and doing stuff and pushing the boundaries with Bitcoin and aligning everything you do with Bitcoin actually leads to a lot more people just looking at you and going, wow, he's or she is very committed to this and very focused on this, and clearly maybe not the most intelligent person, but someone who has some level of talent is really focused on this, and they just get attracted by it at some point.
Yeah.
So I say to people, just follow the alignment of your values with Bitcoin and align everything with Bitcoin. And it just has a way of working itself out and making your life better generally. Yeah. And that's something that, Jeff Booth is often talking about. And I've been friends with Jeff for a few years, and he'd been saying this to me from the beginning of my time at Syz Capital. And it just kept resonating through this process that you just have to align yourself with Bitcoin.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
That's how I called the episode I did with Jeff at the time. That's the person he is.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing, and it's working.
Yeah.
So since then till now, did they become more understanding of it? Are they more appreciative of what's happening? Have they been more curious themselves to investigate this more? I'm sure not everyone is the same, but
yeah, look, they did agree. We had a board meeting about a month ago where we finalized that all the Bitcoin we earned from the fund would be kept on the balance sheet.
Oh, great.
And they did finally agree to that. So I was very happy about that.
That's a big change.
And prior to that agreement, I'd sent them an email with a load of videos that I feel, as I said earlier, there wasn't a lot of educational material available. Today, there's so much.
So much. Yeah.
So I sent them an email with about 9 different videos and podcasts, just about 8 hours of listening, as opposed to Saylor's suggested 1,000 hours.
No, he said just 100 hours. Start with 100.
Yeah.
Then 1,000.
But I think, that was very helpful for them to just get there. But you're always going to get resistance, and you just got to keep pushing forward as you do with everything you do. Right?
Yeah. I want to introduce you to Abundant Minds because they take a very different approach to Bitcoin mining. Most people buy Bitcoin, but the smart ones mine it straight into self-custody. With Abundant Minds, you can do it without giving up your privacy. Abundant Minds was founded by Bo and Christine Marie Turner, a couple who lost more than $500,000 to providers making empty promises. Instead of walking away, they built a company that raises the industry standard and puts client first, and that's why I like them. With Abundant Minds, you own your machines. They never touch your Bitcoin, never skim a revenue share, and you choose your own mining pool. Their customer care is unusual. Clients speak to a real person for self-custody education, privacy consulting, and even visiting their site. They serve clients from around the world, but US investors specifically enjoy a big tax benefit and 100% bonus depreciation. This is more than just mining Bitcoin. It's about freedom, privacy, and purpose. You can book a free strategy call, see how it works, and mine some of your first Bitcoin for free with a special offer for my audience. Learn more on abundantminds.com/efrat. Tired of feeling like your freedom and future are fading away? Do you live in a country with growing inflation, crazy housing prices, weird culture, and a chaotic economy? You're not alone, and my friend Mikkel Thorpe and his team at Expat Money can help. Mikkel is the world's leading expat consultant on a mission to free you from broken systems. He's been an expat for 25 years, lived in 9 different countries, and has helped hundreds of people with second residencies and passports, offshore banking, international investing, and many other essential tools. If you're serious about protecting your wealth and your family, it's not enough to hope things will get better. You need a plan B in another country. The team at Expat Money can help you build it legally, safely, and without wasting years of research. Visit expatmoney.com/eflat and leave your details for a follow-up. All right. Today, you talk and focus a lot on Bitcoin Treasury companies. Simon Gorovich from Metaplanet had 2 parts interview with you. Actually, 2 separate interviews, which I had watched, which were very good. And I've seen you also speak about the topic in different conferences. Do you believe this is what will push us to the next level of Bitcoin adoption? And why is this phenomena interesting?
Well, I think your question is spot on. I think I often say that Bitcoin treasury companies are the release valve of the traditional financial system that has been pushed to a level of mispricing by fiat money printing. Right. 80% or thereabouts of money printing goes into the financial markets. Right. So if you're an equity portfolio manager right now trying to outperform the S&P, if you don't have Apple in your portfolio priced at a ridiculous growth multiple of 30, 35 times for a company that's not growing, then you are likely to underperform the S&P index. So you have to buy a company that doesn't make sense from a valuation basis. And I'm not just talking about Apple. I'm single.
There are many
There's many. And Mag 7 almost entirely are completely mispriced.
Right.
And so you would never buy them on a normal valuation basis if you were a value investor looking at trying to outperform the S&P. But you have no choice because the passive flows are just so massive and they're being driven by the money printing.
Right.
So more and more money just being driven into financial markets through the money printing.
Right.
Same for the bond market, right? Who would lend the Japanese money for 40 years at 2.5%, 3%?
The Americans.
No one. No one in their right mind, because you'd be devalued through your face. I mean, you just lose so much money in terms of purchasing power. So why is this happening? This is happening because pension funds have to have a 40% split into bonds generally. And so that props up the bond market, and this money that keeps just flowing into these institutional investors, again from the money printer, is propping up bond markets to levels that they should never naturally be at, right? If all of this gets sucked out, then we get a proper pricing of assets, that equities can become investable again, bonds can become investable again. And what's doing that? Well, everybody needs Bitcoin in their portfolio, right? You need to have the one asset that is going to keep producing a CAGR of somewhere around 40%. So the majority of these equity portfolio managers can't go out and buy a Bitcoin ETF, but they can buy a Japanese hotel group, or they can buy a business intelligence solutions group in the US.
Pardon my ignorance. They can't buy an ETF because they're not allowed to? It's like...
Generally, their mandate wouldn't allow them to
Okay.
buy an ETF. You're an active manager, you shouldn't be buying an ETF.
Okay.
You should be buying stocks,
Okay.
right? So, if you have to admit to your investors that you need an ETF, then why am I paying you fees if you're just going and paying ETF
Someone
fees?
else. Okay.
I could just buy the ETF
Got it.
myself.
Got
right?
it. Yeah.
So there's this whole
I get it.
optics game
Sure.
that goes alongside it, right? So active managers in equities need Bitcoin treasury companies because they need the performance of Bitcoin, right? So you're going to just see that little release valve of a 1% allocation, 2% allocation, slowly
Growing.
hissing
Yeah.
as the equity markets release
Yeah.
that pent-up valuation support that you've seen through the money printing. Same with the bond market.
Yeah.
Saylor's actively attacking the bond market now
Yeah.
with the preference shares,
Yes.
right? He's paying orders of magnitude above what you can get in normal yields in the bond market. So, of course, it's attracting a lot of capital. I think he's raised somewhere around $7 or $8 billion in the preference shares already, but that market is hundreds of trillions.
Right. It's massive.
Right? So there's that, and then there's, of course, the volatility. If you think about what money printing does to volatility, every time there's a disaster, they print money to support the markets. That's muting volatility. But Bitcoin is very, very volatile, and we're losing volatility now. But generally, options traders, convertible bond managers, they need volatility. For them, volatility is vitality.
Yes.
And it means that, MicroStrategy or Strategy is able to issue zero coupon bonds because his volatility is so high, but he just drops the implied volatility on the pricing of these bonds, gets a zero coupon. So for him, that's another avenue. It's another capital pool that's being tapped. And so all across the financial markets, every capital pool is slowly hissing, but it's going to become a flood. I think that we're just at the beginning of this. You've seen a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies pop up. A lot of them aren't real. A lot of them aren't real Bitcoiners. A lot of them don't even understand Bitcoin.
And do you think they're not going to be able to play out the playbook
It's just
properly?
that, they're not the people you should be giving your money to,
Okay.
right? Saylor has shown us his commitment. He's shown us he's absolutely resolute. Simon the same. Those two companies, from my opinion, they're the gold standard in the Bitcoin treasury space. And we're seeing who's going to shake out in the rest. There's been a lot of these new Bitcoin treasury companies that come up.
Yeah.
I do urge everybody to proceed with caution.
Right.
The mantra in traditional finance is diversify.
Right.
I don't believe that's a sensible strategy.
Okay.
Owning 10 to 20 Bitcoin treasury companies and hoping for the best, they're all very different. And so paying attention to the fact whether or not these are real Bitcoiners behind them, that they understand the need to be aggressive in terms of their acquisition of Bitcoin and constantly creating Bitcoin yield, very important. Their ability to tap different capital pools like Saylor has done through financial engineering in the same way that Simon does with put underwriting is very important as well. Many of these people running these companies have no financial engineering experience.
Right.
So again, there's some real pitfalls that can potentially, be trodden in by investors. So I would just really urge people to proceed with caution. The blue chips are MicroStrategy and MetaPlanet. And as I say, there will be another tier that comes along. But people should definitely proceed with caution.
But definitely proceed. Definitely.
Look, I think it's a phenomenon that's going to continue. I think that, as I've pointed out, this is a release valve for the traditional financial markets. You asked the question about adoption. I think that it's a necessary thing that Wall Street starts adopting Bitcoin. That's where all the capital sits today. For us to see $20, $30 million Bitcoin price, you're going to need serious amounts of capital to come into Bitcoin. And that will be the point where Bitcoin flips everything and everyone wants to denominate in Bitcoin. And that only happens if you see traditional capital start to unlock into the Bitcoin system.
I had spoken to Preston Pish a few days ago about that topic as well, and I'd asked him whether he was predicting that will happen with traditional finance. That is the way that traditional finance is going to get into Bitcoin, and that will be the next step that will open mass adoption of Bitcoin. And he said that he actually did not see that is what it's going to look like. Did you see it coming? Did you think that that's how we're going to roll
The
to the
Bitcoin
next?
treasuries.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
No?
I definitely didn't.
Were you surprised that that's
No,
the way
when
it
Saylor
rolled out?
initiated the strategy, I was running a pension for a UK family, and I wanted to put an allocation into Bitcoin. And the UK pension system didn't allow you to touch any Bitcoin ETFs or ETNs. And so as soon as he announced that, I said, okay, great. And I put a decent allocation of the pension into MicroStrategy. But for me, it was more like, obviously, logically, people will want Bitcoin on the balance sheet. I didn't see the phenomena going crazy. I don't think Saylor did either. I mean, if you listen carefully to what Saylor does, he sort of happened.
Dude, he didn't. I interviewed him a year ago, June 2024, and I asked him that question. I asked him, are you being approached by other CEOs of other companies wanting to do the same what you're doing? And he said, one or two here and there, but not really. He did think or hope that will come, but it wasn't there yet. It was a year ago.
Yeah. No, I remember I was in Nashville in July 24, and I remember seeing Semler Scientific, Metaplanet, and MicroStrategy on stage. And I remember saying to myself, I think probably there'll be 7 to 10 of these companies at next year's Bitcoin conference.
Yep. But and here we are in 1 year.
180.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you for sharing. How do you personally value Bitcoin today? An investment, a monetary asset, or something else?
Well, it's all of those things, and it is hope for people. I mean, you and I just discussed earlier allocations in percentages of net wealth to Bitcoin. I remember having a discussion with someone who is a Bitcoiner, but them questioning my personal allocation, like it was a very large percentage allocation to Bitcoin. And me saying, well, I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin fails, I'm okay to have that level of exposure, because frankly, the world that is a world without Bitcoin is very concerning. It's very troubling. So I would say Bitcoin is hope. It gives hope to me. It makes me very positive about the outlook to the world. You and I, in separate discussions, have talked about, all the very concerning things that are happening in the world. And my podcast, like yours, addresses many of them. And so I end up talking about them a lot. But if there wasn't Bitcoin, then I would not have the level of optimism that I have about the world.
Yep.
Because for me, the answer to a lot of the problems is defunding fiat. And the way you defund fiat is to migrate to Bitcoin. And so, yeah, it's a lot more than just an investment and an asset and a portfolio allocation.
Absolutely. And for you, defunding fiat could possibly be having Bitcoin as the reserve asset and then fiat on top of it, or like not having fiat at all?
I don't know how that is going to play out. In Argentina, you've got President Milei trying to kill the peso at the moment and focus entirely on US dollar.
Right.
And the debate that they're having is about, whether or not you want to have two forms of money. Because people will spend the peso but hoard the US dollar. And the same thing is...
what they're doing with stablecoins anyway.
Sorry?
Which is what they're doing with stablecoins anyway in Argentina. Like they're buying USDT and like converting their pesos into USDT.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everyone in Argentina wants dollars. And if they
Yeah.
understand Bitcoin, they want Bitcoin even more.
Yeah.
My point is, I don't know, and Argentina is a good sort of experiment
Right.
for this with US dollar versus peso, as to how this is all going to play out, because you've got a hard money or a harder money in the US dollar than the peso, which is just a garbage money, right? And so you think about Bitcoin in that context and how that's going to transition. I think more and more you're going to have governments want to have Bitcoin in their central banks or on their Treasury balance sheet, and or in their sovereign wealth funds. But I don't necessarily know how we're going to see all of it transition eventually to an entire Bitcoin standard. It would make a lot of sense that you have one global money, right? It's ridiculous that you have to change euros or Turkish lira or whatever it is when you're traveling to different
foreign
countries.
exchange industry.
It's just nonsense,
Yeah.
isn't it? So I think eventually you will have some level of transition. We're seeing it. I mean, you've just spent a lot of time in Lugano. You can spend Bitcoin pretty much anywhere, Tether pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think it's not clear to me how we see that transition away from fiat, but more and more, people need to be storing value in Bitcoin and eventually spending Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of debate about spending Bitcoin, which means moving to that medium of exchange is more a challenge, because right now we're at the point where Bitcoin's growth is so exponential and will continue that spending it doesn't make so much sense. So we're in that sort of store of value phase of monetary adoption. I have a policy personally where I try to spend Bitcoin, and whenever I spend Bitcoin, I have a double replace methodology.
Okay.
So if I spend $100 in Bitcoin, I have to buy $200 of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that incentivizes me to spend Bitcoin. But I do it because I want to help with propagation of the economy. I'm not sure how we see that transition happen.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's hard to predict what it's going to look like. Are you seeing more people in traditional finance today starting to understand the implications of monetary debasement? And if so, is that translating into action? Or are they simply paying attention to what public companies like Treasury companies in Bitcoin are doing, and that's how you think they'll be attracted? Is it through monetary debasement attention or through Treasury companies' attention?
It's I think that wealthy people have got the joke that debasement is a problem for a long time. That's why you see family offices have 40% of their portfolio in real estate.
Right.
So wealthy families hold so much real estate, and real estate has been seen as the store of value and the thing that obviously is also generating income, because wealthy people like to have income. They like to be fully invested, but they like to have income from those investments so they can fully allocate their capital, because non-working capital is losing money. They get that joke. So the problem for many of them with Bitcoin is that it doesn't produce a yield. It doesn't produce a return. So for them, it's a bit like gold, and that's why gold is only, anywhere from 1 to 10% of portfolios for people. But I think that slowly people are understanding Bitcoin a bit more, and so it is starting to find its way into portfolios. You've got Fidelity and BlackRock now adding it to their multi-strat portfolios. So I think that is now guiding wealthy investors in terms of thinking about Bitcoin as an allocation. You've got pension fund adoption through the ETFs. So it's slowly happening. I think debasement has been understood intuitively, not necessarily directly, for some time. And that if you're sitting in cash, you're wasting your money. Right? So, I think we're getting to a point where institutions allocators, capital waking up. I think the fact that Capital Group, which is a very famous equity allocator, is invested in both Strategy and Metaplanet, is a real wake up for people about the Bitcoin Treasury companies. I think that will lead to much further adoption of Bitcoin Treasury company equity, and therefore other products relating to it.
Yeah. And in that sense, for all those waiting for NGU, for number go up, they'll be happy.
Yeah.
We're going to see Bitcoin continue to rise.
Yeah, look, I think we are out of the 4-year cycle phase now. Bitcoin's being adopted so aggressively by nation states. I mean, you've got Pakistan, you've got Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, as well as El Salvador, Bhutan, all these countries. You know.
So you don't think we're going to see any other 4-year cycles anymore? This is going to change trajectory.
I think the halving will continue to impact liquidity.
Okay.
Even though it's sort of a less and less
significant in terms of
significant number, it's still half the supply.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think you are going to end up with that being some sort of jerk reaction for the pricing. But I don't think you're going to see the same 50 to 80% drawdown that we used to see in previous cycles. I mean, we've just had it witness where, 80,000 Bitcoin impacted the price by 2.5%.
Tiny.
And it really looked like Galaxy messed up that execution. They smashed the market and it was really badly dealt with. And the market absorbed it, and now we're back up to the same levels.
And if this would have happened 3-5 years ago, that would have completely turned things for people. Okay.
Yeah.
For the market. Okay. I'm shifting gears a little bit. So you've been successful in both finance and Bitcoin. What have those experiences taught you about what actually matters in life?
I think low ego is very important. We've talked about this already. I always give advice to grads, starting out. You need to look at your day. You need to be conscious about what happened in your day. You need to take time and stock of your day and review what went well, what went badly, what would you change, how would you change it, how would you change that interaction with the chairman or the managing director or whatever for the better.
Yeah.
I think conscious recalibration is the way to grow. Mm-hmm. I think that's a hack for anyone in any industry, and it doesn't matter if it's finance, Bitcoin, or anything else. I think that's a growth tactic that I've used throughout my career. And I think, again, it requires a bit of humility to say I was wrong. Mm-hmm. I did that badly. So I would say those are the sort of the
without beating yourself down.
Yeah.
But with the intention of learning something from it.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's capable of irrational behavior. We're emotional humans at the end of the day. And not getting too caught up in that, or being cognizant that you did get caught up in that, is also a growth mechanism, right?
It sounds like, you're doing a lot of introspecting, and that is something that is not common for either people to do or to admit that they're doing, especially not men, from my experience, which I think is very unusual and very cool to see, because I think that is a massive tool for growth, for personal growth.
Yeah, no, it served me well. When I was younger, I was a very ambitious, very aggressive, very driven young man, and it really helped calm me down and help me recalibrate. Also, I was very lucky to start to manage people very early, and that requires a big mindset shift, because management doesn't come naturally to humans. You've really got to be very empathetic. Yes. You've really got to care about people that you might not even like. right? And you've got to, again, be humble and willing to hear things that you might not like. It's like being a parent, right? Management of people is like being a parent.
Absolutely.
Because generally people will behave like children in any environment. And so I remember I was made a manager very, very early, and I was a bit concerned about it. I suddenly had a very big team.
Yeah.
And so I read every book I could find on management.
Right.
And obviously it was pre-kids, so I was able to do so. But I really studied. And I remember it was funny, I had a guy he was my age, but he worked for me on my team, and he said, what have you been doing? Like, have you been reading books or something? Like he said,
felt like you were textbook.
He was like, you've really changed. Like it's quite impressive. And I said, yeah, actually I have. And I showed him all the books, and so he then started reading them as well.
That is awesome.
But yeah, it was quite funny because we were competitors.
Yeah.
And I ended up then later hiring him. And so we still had that competitive sort of dynamic. But he, in fairness to him, he recognized, he's like, yeah, you've really stepped it up a level. Like, what have you done? And so it was that, again, being willing to say, I don't know anything about this. I've got to try and learn. I'm learning on the spot, treading water, sort of feet running under the desk like a newscaster.
I totally agree with that. Being also a manager for many, many years of many people, I think that the thing that and tell me if you think that that's right or wrong, the thing that distinguishes good managers from bad managers is, first of all, the coercion and, being aggressive towards people versus finding a communication that actually works. Mm-hmm. But also, when you are managing someone, what you are basically doing, if you're a good manager, is you're putting yourself aside. It's not about you at the moment. It's about them. How can you help them? How can you progress them? How can you help them achieve their goals, but also their full potential without even them knowing what their full potential is or how they can get there? And once you are really selfless in that sense, and it's all about them, it makes you a terrific manager. Yeah. Right?
Management is about service. It's about how can I help you become excellent at what you do. And yeah, that was a big realization. I got that from the many books I read.
Right.
And,
it's in the books, you say.
It's in the books.
Well, I haven't read them, but...
Well, you clearly worked it out anyway.
I exercised.
Yeah, exactly. You practically did it. I was theoretic.
Exactly.
Yes. But that's absolutely spot on. You are a servant to your people to help them perform to the highest level. Yeah.
And then they're so grateful. And then they love working with you. And then you get other people calling you up saying, do you have any open positions? I want to work with you. I heard you're a really good manager.
Yeah, it's funny, I mean, I find that people aren't that grateful, actually. When you really try and help someone, people can, especially in finance, maybe it's finance. Right?
Okay.
Like people are, there's a certain type that it attracts. I'm not your typical type that works in finance. And
right.
I often used to confuse the HR managers. They were like, what are you doing here? But,
you're not the typecast.
Yeah, but it's, people are high ego. They're, very...
Go.
Go. I'm the best. And,
yes.
So they kind of, they might see how you've helped them, but then they don't want to necessarily admit that later,
Absolutely. Back to ego. Okay. I'm going to skip a few just so I can get to my beautiful batch of short questions in the end. But I do have to ask you whether you think Bitcoin is a spiritual tool and why.
That's not a short question.
No. Before I get to the short batch.
Look, I have got to the point of believing that Bitcoin was a benevolent gift from a higher power. That sounds pretty wacky to your average person, I'm sure. But it's too perfect. And, the whole game theory and how it's playing out, we're seeing this. I believe that it creates a benevolent mindset as well, because you become much more comfortable, much more confident in your own stability and security, which, working hard and, securing wealth is part of. If your wealth is melting away from you constantly and you're in this panic, which currency should I hedge myself in and all of this, like I was back in the day in traditional finance, then you can't worry too much about other people. You're trying to survive, right? Yeah. And I do believe that Bitcoin, whether or not I'm right about that, it does lead people down the path of benevolence and wanting to help other people and being much more long-term mindset. So if you were going to create a tool for the benefit of humankind, then you would fix the money. And it did, all the technology existed, but the way that it was brought together, the way that Satoshi knew to disappear, and every other crypto founder post has been some sort of personality behind their crypto project. But Satoshi, the very first one, knew that he had to be, or she had to be, completely anonymous. I really feel it was a gift. It was a gift to humanity, whether that's from someone in the CIA who saw what was happening and just realized he had to save the world, or she, or it was a higher power that came and said, humanity's at a turning point, like you said before.
Yeah.
We need to do something. We need to help humanity. And I do believe that that's a very high possibility.
Me too. Thank you. I'm not the only woo-woo one here. Okay, so here's the batch of my short fireside questions.
Yeah.
One book that permanently shifted your worldview.
It was Sapiens. We've talked about it already.
Was it?
It really was. It got me to the point of exploring Bitcoin, discovering Bitcoin. It made me realize a lot about the world that I was concerned about, that I didn't entirely understand.
Okay.
And it's made me think a lot more about the consequences of technology.
Well, I think then I owe Yuval Noah Harari a thank you, even though I don't appreciate his work very much. But okay. Meditation, fasting, breath work. Do you practice any?
I try to do meditation. I struggle with it, but I definitely see the benefits. Mm-hmm. Breath work I've done, very surprising work that breath work is. And fasting, I've done it. I actually had a Legionnaire's disease in 2017 and another rare form of pneumonia.
Okay.
And the only thing that finally got me over it was fasting for 3 days.
Which, in other words, is my body doing its own thing without intervention of anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing. Okay, one lesson from traditional finance that still serves you today. Is it the low ego? Or?
I'd say it's work ethic.
Work ethic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was my lesson from traditional finance that I had to understand every aspect of what I was dealing with. And so, I'm always very hands-on in terms of trying to understand something, proof of work.
Right.
And so I tend to go deep on things, and it's served me pretty well.
Lovely. What's one thing you believe 5 years ago that you no longer do? You believed 5 years ago that you no longer do today?
Well, we talked about this earlier, but COVID, when I first heard about it, mm-hmm. I was concerned by it. Mm-hmm. I was living in Hong Kong. There were dead people on the street, on the TV.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I believed that this was a very concerning thing.
Yeah.
It took me about 3 months to realize that
That's pretty fast.
this was all a complete farce and no one was dying. And so.
Got it. Thank you. What do you hope people remember you for?
Oh, I I do feel a responsibility to educate people about Bitcoin.
Okay.
And help them see the light that is hope and optimism about the future.
Okay. And then my last question is, what gives you hope? But you just said that.
Bitcoin.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. You shared yourself so generously, and I appreciate that. It
Thanks.
was lovely spending time with you, and thanks for having me hijack your studio.
You're more than welcome. Come again.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.